Hauntingly beautiful is the most apt description that I could give to this game. At first, this was a mod for Half-Life, released in 2008, which is when I just got out of middle school, and this actually became the pioneer for the walking simulator genre in video gaming. Set on a desolate Iridian island in Scotland, the story unveils as you, the silent protagonist, navigate the barren terrain while listening to fragmented letters addressed to somebody named Esther. These letters, read by a melancholic narrator, are the foundation of the experience, weaving a tale that is as elusive as it is emotional. And today, we'll delve into the story to unravel its layers and explore its themes. If you enjoy this content, subscribe. If you like the video, show it, give a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. All engagement is engagement, and welcome to Dear Esther. As the game begins, you find yourself on the shore of an unnamed island, greeted by the narrator's voice.
The gulls do not land here anymore. I've noticed that this year they seem to shun the place.
It's clear that the words are part of a letter addressed to Esther, though the full context remains shrouded in mystery. The narrator's tone is somber and reflective, filled with vivid imagery and poetic language. From the outset, I got the hint that this isn't going to be a straightforward narrative. The story is fragmented, its pieces scattered like the ruins that litter this island, but not as difficult to understand as Signalis was. If you play the Landmark edition of Dear Esther, the director's cut, which I did, a lot of the questions you might have had are actually answered by the developers directly. Walking forward, we enter an abandoned building, hearing voices along with a rising musical score. Painted on the wall with a sort of almost bioluminescent green paint is a chemical structure, which is likely a representation of ethanol or a similar organic compound, as the specific arrangement of these atoms with carbon, hydrogen, and hydroxyl groups is consistent with molecules commonly found in alcohol chemistry. In the context of Dear Esther, well, you'll see. Noticing the blinking red light, the narrator's voice guides you as you explore, speaking of people named Paul and Donnelly, and soon we would hear of Jakobsen.
Reading Donnelly by the weak afternoon sunlight. He landed on the south side of the island, followed the path to the bay and climbed the mount. He did not find the caves, and he did not chart the north side. I think this is why his understanding of the island is flawed, incomplete. He stood on the mount and only wondered momentarily how to descend, but then he didn't have my reasons.
Each of these figures seems connected to Esther's story, though their roles remain unclear. The desolate island itself feels alive, almost like a character in its own right. Its caves, cliffs, and abandoned structures whisper of a past that you're only starting to hear. From afar, one might remark that its solemn beauty stems from the primordial atmosphere of being on that island. As dark clouds loom over your head, it's frightening but peaceful. It's only as you look closer at the finer details do you notice the litter in the ground, the stains of imperfection that bore into the island. In the same regards, the human soul, its essence, is composed of spots of darklings that whisper. And actually, the devs designed this island to where if you look at it from the right angle, you'll see a woman laying on her side, looking upon a shipwreck, as the narrator writes to Esther about driving on a highway. A shade appears in the corner of my eyes, and as quickly as I noticed it, it vanishes. Taking the road ahead, leaving oblivion behind, we hear about how Esther was taken by the car of a drunk. It's safe for you now to assume that Esther is wifey. Was wifey. Arriving at a Bothy, a Scottish term for a cottage, I take a peek inside to see its dilapidated state, yet admiring its beauty from the outside.
3 cormorants seen at dusk. They did not land. This house built of stone, built by a long-dead shepherd. Contents: my camp bed, a stove, a table, chairs, my clothes, my books. The caves that score out the belly of this island, leaving it famished. My limbs and belly famished. This skin, these organs, this failing eyesight. When the battery runs out in my torch, I will descend into the caves and follow only the phosphorescence home.
However, on the table, we see a baby's ultrasound, which we will talk about soon. Stepping off a cliff to see what would happen, the screen goes dark. In this abyss, we hear the clicking sounds of a car's hazard lights, as well as the ultrasound of an unborn baby's beating heart, before we hear the whispered begging, come back. Descending, or was I pulled into this cave? Surrounded by mysticism personified, I found myself enveloped by an ethereal beauty. Entering the cave, passing the green and blue water reflections that danced slowly along the walls, I could hear the haunting singing of a woman. But who lit all these candles, I wondered. As I approached the waterfalls cascading into the pool below, I leapt without hesitation, not even a gasp escaping my lips. Beneath the water, I lingered, captivated by the resonant sound around me. And there, submerged, I realized I had no need to breathe. For if my wife had come to pass, so too should I cease to exist. Oxygen was unnecessary. I could have stayed under there forever. And yet, I climbed upwards and onwards, emerging through the glowing ice blue light into a vast cavern with a river winding its way through. The symphony of sounds grew richer, accompanying enigmatic symbols painted on the walls as if they had souls of their own. But these symbols, mysteriously bewitching at first, soon became oppressive, their intensity overwhelming as I trudged through this tunnel. The terrifying words and crashing cymbals seemed to surround me, their weight driving me to the brink of madness. Desperate, I escaped back into and through the solace of the waters below, where the harmonic chorus pleaded with me to stay. But I felt compelled to rise from the depths, breaking through into what felt like another world, and born into a dampened dream, or perhaps a memory. On this highway underwater, with muted sounds, I found a lone stretcher. Attached was an IV bag, and scattered across it were coins, payment for the ferryman Charon to cross the river Styx. However, my time here was short, for my rebirth saw me rise up and out of the waters to give one final push out of the cave. On the beach, the moonlight haunts you, as the narrator speaks of cars and electrical diagrams before coming to an offering of lit candles and pictures.
Dear Esther, I find each step harder and heavier. I drag Donnelly's corpse on my back across these rocks, and all I hear are his whispers of guilt, his reminders, his burnt letters, his neatly folded clothes. He tells me I was not drunk at all.
His voice, frantic and pleading, begins to peel back the layers of what actually happened and what this entire experience is. But first, we see a figure standing atop a hill looking off in the distance. Then, we see medical equipment in one cave, a broken picture of Esther in the next, and rusted car parts buried in the last. We can not only piece together the clues and come to a realization, but come to an acceptance. As many of you have come to the conclusion by now, this island isn't a real place. There's car wreckage, books and Spider-Man comics, out-of-place items strewn all around the island, and there's candles. Who could have put all the candles here and lit them all? In fact, the character we play isn't actually there either. It's something akin to his soul, which is why he never talks or makes a sound and doesn't need to breathe, hence why he can stay underwater without needing air. Some people have theorized that the island is real and somebody came here knowing that they would never leave. And while that is interesting, the devs themselves have stated that the island isn't real, that despite being modeled after a real location, the island itself isn't an actual place in the game. This is the mental representation of our main character, meant to reflect the emotional turmoil and the stages of grief that he's going through because of what he had done.
There were chemical stains on the tarmac, the leak of air conditioning, brake fluid and petrol. He kept sniffing at his fingers as he sat by the roadside, waiting as if he couldn't quite understand or recognize their smell. He said he'd been traveling back from a sales conference in Exeter. He'd stopped for farewell drinks earlier, but had kept a careful eye on his intake. You could hear the sirens above the idling traffic.
Our protagonist was out driving. He had his wife with him, but because he'd been drinking, he got into a car crash that killed his wife. But his wife wasn't the only one who died, because when you consider the ultrasounds we hear and what I think are flashes of the ultrasound pictures when you die, plus the actual picture of the ultrasound from the Bothy, you realize that his wife was pregnant. And as you have seen, whenever you die, he begs,
"Come back."
Which is him begging for his wife to return to the land of the living. Of course, our protagonist lived, as most drunk drivers do, but he killed Esther and his unborn baby. We can ascertain that he was drunk by looking at his dialogue, the chemical structures painted as hints, and even a bottle of whiskey found in an abandoned building, which was pointed out in the director's playthrough. The climax of Dear Esther occurs as you reach the highest point on the island, a radio tower. The journey up until this point has been one of quiet introspection, but the final moments bring a sense of culmination and comprehension.
We've always been drawn here. One day the gulls will return and nest in our bones and our history. I will look to my left and see Esther Donnelly flying beside me. I will look to my right and see Paul Jacobson flying beside me. They will leave white lines carved into the air to reach the mainland, where help will be sent.
The narrator's voice grows increasingly poetic as he reveals that the characters he was talking about the whole time were actually himself, Paul, and his dead wife, Esther. This game, this journey, was not just one of the mind, but of him trying to work through his guilt with these letters addressed to Esther. However, unable to cope with his mistakes, unable to live and bear the weight of what he'd done, he killed himself in real life. Atop the radio tower, Paul jumps off, falling to his end, in the hopes that he would be reunited with Esther. I'd probably do the same thing that he did. If or when my wife passes, so too shall I. But before Paul hits the sand, he transforms into a bird. I don't plan to turn into a bird. But this is signifying his release of guilt, finally gaining his freedom to be reunited with his wife and child. If Paul went to Silent Hill, which ending do you think he would have gotten? Click this video to see my explanation for every ending in Silent Hill 2.